Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
This is Up. I'm David Gura, and this week a reporter asked Beto O'Rourke if there is anything the president could do to make this better. Well, here's what the former congressman and current candidate for the Democratic nomination had to say in reply.
He's been calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals. I don't know, like, members of the press, what the Hold on a second. You know, it's these questions that you know the answers to. I mean, connect the dots about what he's been doing in this country. He's not tolerating racism. He is promoting racism.
Jeff Jarvis is going to be mad I bleeped that out, but had to do it. Teaches journalism at CUNY, and he translated what Beto said into a set of rules for journalists. One is stop getting other people to say what you should. He calls it a journalistic trick as old as pencils. Another one, don't ask someone else about racism so you don't have to say it yourself. In other words, do not accept bad answers. Follow up on your questions and other reporters' questions, and be honest. Report inconvenient truths. Jeff Jarvis with us here now in New York to talk about how we talk about this presidency, how we talk about this moment, how we talk about these shootings as well. And Jeff, let's tick through some of those rules if we could. I was reading what you wrote in compliment with what Margaret Sullivan wrote for the Washington Post this week. She said, just as there was in the 1950s and 60s while covering civil rights, or today in covering the climate crisis, there actually is a right or wrong side on the matter of controlling rampant gun violence. Journalists need to be on the right side of that and not afraid to own it.
David, journalism is broken. The times are broken, and it's broken. It doesn't know how to deal with it. We do not need stenographers for racists and liars. And that's what we are. We're just repeating what he says. We've got to back up and say, what does this country need? I redefine journalism because I have tenure and I can do things like that. And so
you don't have to bleep out the F word when you say it, right? Yeah, all right.
I won't get you fired.
All right, thank you.
And my definition of journalism now is to convene communities into respectful, informed, and productive conversation. So we have to look at what's stopping us from doing that. And I think we need investigators, yes, and we also need educators. The best journalism, the story of our times is racism. It's been the story for a century, but we're finally realizing it today. And the best journalism I've seen in the last week on that story was on this network, Eddie Glaude Jr., on Nicole Wallace's show on Tuesday. That clip has been everywhere, and if you haven't watched it, please, people, watch it. And what he does is educate. Mm-hmm. And the New York Times turns around and has a ridiculous headline about
I got it right here. Trump urges unity versus racism.
Exactly.
On the first edition, second edition, assailing hate but not guns.
Which, how does that possibly inform the electorate? How does that possibly tell anything about what the country is today? We need investigators, we need educators, and we probably also need group therapists. Because this country is screwed up, and we've got to figure out how to bring people together and build bridges among communities.
I know these guys want to get in on this as well, but let me ask you one more follow-up quickly as I read other media critics on all of this. Jack Schaefer, writing for Politico, talks about those headlines, and he talks about how we seek out information, what we expect from these information outlets, and he had kind of a contrarian view of those headlines, as he often does. The fury uncaged by the 5-word Times headline had less to do with the language used and more to do with the political validation that liberals and lefties have come to demand from the news media they consume. What do you say to that?
Well, validating the fact that we're run by a racist in this country, you bet your rear end. Of course we have to do that. We have to call what it is. Use the words. It's not racially tinged, it's racist. It's not fabricating, it's lies. And if we're not going to be honest and truthful with the public we serve, how do we expect to get anywhere? Now, merely doing that isn't enough either, because we have a third of this country that is in mass delusion. We have to call on, I believe, on other disciplines to understand how to deal with this. To get communities to get along better, I think we have to learn from anthropologists. To understand delusion, we've got to go to neuroscience and psychology. This is a bigger problem than what we've done in the past in journalism, which is just repeating words and being a stenographer.
I want you guys to talk to each other. Because, Clinton, you are so good at pinpointing what is false, what is the conspiracy theory, how that permeates and gets promulgated throughout all of this. I'm curious, what questions do you have for him about how we better cite that? I mean, we go back to the Twitter feed and what we saw yesterday.
I got questions for Clint about how
we go for
journalism.
it.
Yeah. So one thing that I find interesting is that journalists have sort of taken it upon themselves, especially after 2016, to be better fact checkers. You know, that was their immediate response, to be better in terms of delivering truth. But that's not actually how this falls apart, right? Social media, the source of the information is the person that shares the information with you. If you want the things that people believe, this is from old war propaganda, that which you hear first, that which you hear the most, that which comes from a trusted source, and that which is not accompanied by a rebuttal, that's called your social media feed, right? Like you've already arranged it that way. Yeah. And so you're going to solidify what you believe based on that. So journalists, I think, have improved already, right? They're trying to work through this and put in procedures. But the society has not improved on this. They've actually doubled down. They've reinforced a lot of those mechanisms, and they're saying, this is what I want to believe. And you've heard me talk about it. I call it preference bubbles. People are choosing the sources they want, which will reconfirm their belief, confirmation bias, and they're getting it from people that look like them and talk like them.
The Russians you cover know how to manipulate this.
They are masters of this.
And then Trump, in turn, knows how to manipulate this, and we're just manipulating it.
Jeff, the challenge here, though, is you're not pivoting in real time. You're trying to process and change in real time. And to make the kind of accommodation that Clint is talking about here, we're learning. We have to figure it out. And that's the difficulty, because time passes as all of that is happening.
Renee DiResta, who covers this stuff, had a great tweet this morning where she said when one of these bad things comes out, the conspiracy theory tweet that you know who retweeted, if we report that, we amplify the bad message. Mm-hmm. If we debunk it, we amplify the bad message. Right. If we ignore it, as maybe I wish we would, then the conspiracy theorists say, see, you're after us. Right. So let's recognize we are in a no-win position. The country is in a no-win position. We need new strategies.
I just wanted to pick up where Jeff, you said, earlier something about we need to really focus on racism, which is the history of this country. And when connecting it all, don't you think, I know you think this, that what the problem is that we need more journalists who understand what bigotry and racism is. I like to think I do my best, Jeff does his best, Clint does his best, and you do. But I'm always happy when Zerlina is at the table, always. And so the idea isn't always just having women or people of color at the table, but at the upper echelons of management within journalism to recognize and name racism and sexism. And then I throw to Zerlina to get her take on that.
Well, I mean,
is that wrong?
No, you're right. I mean, I think part of the problem is that, yes, there's a lack of diversity in the higher levels of journalism, the people that are setting the agenda for what to cover and how to cover it. And
defining it, though, is what I'm saying. What is racism? What is sexism? We miss that a lot.
Well, yeah, because you have people who are making the decisions who haven't had that. They don't have the lived experience to then inform how they're going to decide to cover something. And I think often, to Jeff's point, calling something racist, that can be an objective truth. That can be something that is just true, and it is not, saying that doesn't mean then you're not an objective journalist. And I think that fact has been lost on many journalists in the Trump era because they feel like calling something racist is a personal attack on the person when you're actually defining the behavior and the language. In addition, I think we have a normalcy bias. I think that ever since Donald Trump came down the escalator and said Mexicans were rapists and murderers, and then became the top candidate on the Republican side, we didn't know what to do about that. And so basically what we did was we acted like this was completely normal, no matter what he did. Because he was eventually the nominee and now the president. So we can't act like this is all falling apart and our institutions are all crumbling. We have to pretend, because it's a delusion that we're living in, because it's terrifying to think about what the alternative scenario could be.
It is Monday, the 12th of August of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. It's been one of those weekends. Another one. Oh my God. Another one like all the rest. Except, well, the world as we know it is without a Jeffrey Epstein. And what is William Barr going to do about it? And I don't know. Do we want to dip our toe in the conspiracy well? Shall we? I don't know. Let's not. there's enough actual facts to this case that makes it rather mysterious in its own right. Okay? I'm not sure if I want to take the word of former mobsters, because I don't know. Between you and me, is there really ever a former mobster? I don't know. Last I heard, they take an oath. All right? If the guy's alive and he says he's a former mobster, I think the former part might be a little hedged. Yes, it might. So I don't know if I want to take the word of a, quote, former, end quote, mobster about Bill Barr visiting Epstein, or at least the facility, in the days before Epstein's demise. I'm not quite ready to call it a suicide yet. All I know is the guy's dead. We should wait for the inquest. That's what I think. And if the inquest is a whitewash, well, at least we have an inquest. Okay? We can figure it out 70 years later when they finally release the records. Or will they? I remember on the JFK thing, I remember LBJ or somebody in the LBJ administration said that LBJ had written off on this memorandum that the whole Warren report will be opened up to the public in 70 years after, I believe, Johnson's death. And I think it was GW who extended that. Oh, no, there's no way. Or was it 50 years? There was some amount of time that was about to come to pass, or sometime in the future where it was close enough that it caused a few people to become concerned, and I was wondering why. So why don't we go ahead and whitewash this inquest? We can figure it out later? No, we're not going to figure it out later. We're going to figure it out while it's going on, because that's what sunshine and government is all about. What is this, Russia? Yes, we have some Russia stories today, a couple of them at the chef's table. Oh my God. And boy, other news out there as well in the world. I mean, did you know that North Korea just keeps ramping up their saber rattling? At the same time that Trump was making jokes in the Hamptons about our allies in the region, not just the usual ones in Europe, but our allies in the region. And the people were in the Hamptons were rattling their jewelry and yucking it up. When you reach a certain level of, shall we say, monetary stability in vast amounts, how much loyalty does one have to nation? Your loyalty becomes very finite, very singular, very self-absorbed. So I don't want to hear a bunch of, shall we say, economically stable people in vast amounts telling the rest of us what is American and what is not. That's right. We got to get mad. I want everyone to get up out of their seats and yell out the window right now. No, don't do that. Don't do that. We don't need to go crazy to make our point. Though I love how if you ever give just even a slight muscular response as a liberal to any conservative push, oh my God, they have the vapors. They absolutely have the vapors. They expect you to follow the norms of polite society while they bully you and spit in your face the whole time. But you know what? Repetition works. Repetition works. Some people in certain professions know that the way to sort of like push a point home. Well, I mean, certain professions like, shall we say, like writing, or by extension, advertising, and by extension of that, propaganda. Well, the way to drive a point home is to present it in a group of 3. Repeat it. And then repeat those 3 repetitions 3 more times. Yeah, over and over and over. For instance, Moscow Mitch, he hates that. So it is the one thing that he's gone apoplectic, so much so that he fell at home and broke his shoulder. It's the only thing he ever brought to the floor. I know it's a bad joke, but hey, got to be flexible, okay? Repeat and stick to it. And Trump is a racist. He loves to brand. He spent decades branding himself as a racist. So let's call him that over and over and over again. I know. I've tried this. I've been doing this. I mean, I know this, okay? But in my little burg out here in the Pacific Northwest, where all the crazy, not all the crazy white people, because there's still crazy white people who stayed where they were. But there's enough crazy white people that thought they could, escape the darkening hordes by coming to the Pacific Northwest because they heard it was white utopia. Okay? And that's sort of what, Dylan Roof had fought against. No, he's going to stay in the South. Why run? This is my country. This is my white country. Why should I leave the beauty of the South and go somewhere else? Whereas this manifesto that this El Paso guy had talked about a fractured America. One where the country will be broken up into racial districts. Kind of like what Andrew Jackson and Van Buren wanted way back in the day. No wonder Trump loves Andrew Jackson. Yeah, the western parts of the western states were going to be an autonomous state, province of, the genocided Indians that were left. All of them. Every tribe. That's what the Trail of Tears started out to be. And he, meaning Jackson, wanted to divide the country up into racial districts until Congress shut him down. No wonder Trump loves Andrew Jackson. The more you know, the more you know. So we must take care. Because this guy's manifesto, he wanted a fractured America. An America that doesn't exist. One in which, there's a confederacy of states. Divided by their race. That is the vision of the master race. I don't know. It doesn't seem so well thought out to me. They don't really seem like very enlightened types. And that's why they've always been on the wrong side of history. And those who espouse those, at least even the beginning of those beliefs, are also going to be on the wrong side of history. And what we need to do is be, forceful within our own Constitution to repeat over and over. Trump is a racist. Do they want branding? They get branded. Moscow Mitch? Look, we're not saying that he's an actual spy of Moscow. But his thirst and quest for power and whatever else is more important than, stopping Moscow from doing whatever it wants to do. Like I said, you reach a certain level of economic stability in vast amounts, and your loyalties are no longer to neighbor, community, and nation. Your loyalty becomes singular and self-absorbed. I don't think that is a good behavior for representative democracy. I really don't. But this is reporter's opinion. What else is on the rest of the menu? Oh, my God. Well, of course, we had to start off with a fairly longish piece, and here I am going off. Well, that was Professor Jeff Jarvis from the City University of New York, Graduate School of Journalism, just going off on the media for acting as stenographers for Trump. And the only quibble I might have with Professor Jeff Jarvis is that really the media is not acting like stenographers for Trump. They are stenographers for Trump. They are. On the rest of the menu, the Department of Justice has moved to decertify the outspoken Union of Immigration Judges. Well, Trump said he wanted to get rid of all the judges. The Trump administration moved to limit state powers to block pipelines and fossil fuel terminals. You have to have something that's going to blow up in your backyard, just like Texas. Just like Texas. And a battle to give African Americans political power is playing out in Mississippi's courts. Oh, political power is basically changing the rules and the laws that prevent, well, black candidates from running for office. Weird, huh? In 2019. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Russia orders Google not to advertise, quote, illegal mass events after the largest political protests in almost a decade. And with years of links to Russia, the Texas secessionist movement's flag is now flying in Moscow. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is our chat room link, deftly placed there, I might add, and monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is our Patreon link, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. You know, crowdsourcing this resistance endeavor for 8 years has been possible because you are our biggest contributor. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you for your generosity and allowing us to do our civic duty as the founders originally intended, even before the writing of the Constitution of the United States. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Do so at Netroots Radio. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I put those links out on social media for your linking pleasure. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with where we're at. Right there in the W's. Or as some people like to say, the W's. Mm-hmm. Okay. A W would be very pointed like at you, but a W is almost like an affirmation. Like, yeah. Okay, you got to live in the West. Or maybe you have to be born in the West to get the nuance between a creek and a crick. I think most people would think a crick is like something that you get in your neck. You know, pull the muscle in your neck. I got a crick in my neck. In some places, it might be a babbling brook. It could. And it often is. Well, let's look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Oh, yes, it is. It is River City Hash Mondays. I don't know. I just put up another link on my tabs. I should have just pushed the tab, but who knows? Regardless, Christina Goldbaum of the New York Times, the paper of past records, brings us this first offering. The Justice Department, actually, I'm the Justice Department on Sunday nights. I don't know why I have to keep telling people this. The Department of Justice is who she's speaking about, just so let's be clear. Well, the Department of Justice, I had to move in here and get the Netroots Radio style manual out and correct this. I've redlined and made a mark. Well, the DOJ has moved to decertify the Union of Immigration Judges, a maneuver that could muffle an organization whose members have sometimes been openly critical of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement agenda. Oh, you mean judges who follow the rule of law, the ones who are tasked with upholding the Constitution of the United States and protecting it from enemies, foreign and domestic, even when that domestic threat might come from the Oval Office? You mean those judges? I just want to be clear. I mean, we're not talking about, like the original People's Court back there, right after the Wehrmacht Republic there. They had another judicial system set up called the People's Court. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Some people consider that to not really be the rule of law. The department filed a petition on Friday asking the Federal Labor Relations Authority to determine whether the union, the National Association of Immigration Judges, should have its certification revoked because its members are considered management officials ineligible to collectively organize. Oh, judges are white collar, and therefore you're part of the club. And when you're part of the club, we tell you what to do. That's how the club works. The move suggested escalating tensions between overwhelmed immigration judges desperate for greater resources and a Justice Department run by Bill Barr, I might add, pushing them to quickly address a backlog of immigration cases. Okay, this is the Gish Galop strategy, where they just pile on the information, they just pile it on, and while you're trying to answer their question before you even get to the point of answering the question, they pile on some more. The Justice Department's recent petition will most likely prompt an investigation by the Federal Labor Relations Authority. Volkovici of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. The Trump administration unveiled a proposal that would curb state powers to block pipelines and other energy projects, part of the administration's effort to boost domestic oil, gas, and coal development. The EPA drew swift criticism from New York's governor and an organization representing progressive states. It comes 4 months after Donald Trump ordered the EPA to change a section of the U.S. Clean Water Act that states like New York and Washington have used to delay pipelines and terminals. When implemented, this proposal will streamline the process for constructing new energy infrastructure. Oh, Andrew Wheeler, of course, when he says streamline, he means fast track, with out much in the terms of even a vetting process and bidding. You want bids? Yeah, the bidding process is who stuffs the most money in an envelope and can get it into Wheeler's pockets. Trump and EPA Chief Andrew Wheeler have accused some states of denying permits for reasons that go beyond water protection, such as climate change impacts, because, look, Wheeler and Trump's pockets have been stuffed, and they want some action right now. The law? The law? They tell you what the law is. Progress brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, there is a fight against racist laws intended to prevent black people from being seated in the state legislature and from holding statewide office. Mississippi's long-standing laws that prevent African Americans from voting or assuming political power are being challenged in the courts on several fronts. The population of the state is 38% African American, the highest percentage in the country. But its laws are designed to make it harder for people of color to win statewide office. Well, how else were they able to keep the Reconstruction of the United States at bay so far back? Mississippi's African-American voting bloc could prove even more critical than usual this November. The state's four-term Attorney General, Jim Hood, has a shot at winning the state's gubernatorial seat in the general election against Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves. Or former state Supreme Court Justice Bill Waller, who face off in a Republican primary runoff election this month. The race for governor will have a major impact on whether Republicans gain complete control over the redistricting process and unchecked authority to redraw racially divided districts as they did in 2012. I wouldn't stop them at 2012. Those 2012 legislative district lines are currently being challenged in the Fifth Circuit. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of 3 African-American residents of one of the state's racially drawn Senate districts and a former state senator who was unseated in 2015 after the new maps moved him into the gerrymandered district. Well, that brings us to our break, which we should do. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, it was the best of times. Joan Didion wrote that the Manson murders marked the end of the 1960s. The impact of the murders changed the image of hippies from that of free love peaceniks to something far more sinister. They also changed Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood revisits that bygone era with the fictional Rick Dalton, a washed-up actor relegated to guest appearances on TV dramas, but whose next-door neighbors are the then-hot director Roman Polanski and his new bride Sharon Tate. Rick, played by Leonardo DiCaprio in a sure-to-be-nominated performance, drinks too much and spends most of his time with his stunt double-turned-gopher, Cliff, Brad Pitt, who's been rendered unemployable in the biz thanks to rumors surrounding the death of his wife. In true Tarantino fashion, we get dangling clues but never really learn if Cliff is guilty. For most of the 165-minute piece, we see Rick working and Cliff driving around fantastic sets in a vintage car, listening to Boss Radio from 1969 and doing various jobs for his buddy. While doing this one day, he picks up a hitchhiker who calls herself Pussycat, played by Margaret Qualley, who takes him to Spawn Ranch, a dilapidated former movie set where she lives with her erstwhile family, headed by a guy named Charlie. At this point, the narrative might seem familiar, but you should know better. Once Upon a Time is a movie very much in the style of its famous maker, and mixes performance and humor as easily as it does fact and fiction. Early on, when Cliff accepts a challenge from Bruce Lee, you know that reality here is going to have lots of curves. This one even has Hollywood in its name, so be warned, you'll be lost on Oscar night without seeing it. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Sophie Bushwick. Is that person really glad to see me, or are they just being polite? Some people struggle to distinguish a perfunctory grin from a truly happy smile, and computers have found this task even more difficult. That is, until researchers trained a program to detect when a smile is genuine. Visual computing researchers at the University of Bradford in the UK started with software for analyzing a changing facial expression. This program can examine a video clip of a human head and identify specific details around the eyes, cheeks, and mouth. Then the program tracks the details moving relative to each other as the face smiles. Next, the scientists had their program evaluate 2 sets of video clips. In one, subjects performed posed smiles. In the other, they watched a film that inspired genuine displays of emotion. The program calculated the differences among the subjects' faces during the 2 clips, and it turns out that your mouth, cheeks, and eyes move differently when you're faking that smirk. In particular, the muscles around the eyes shift 10% more for a real smile than they do for a fake one. These results are in the journal Advanced Engineering Informatics. The researchers suggest their work could improve a computer's ability to analyze facial expressions and thus to interact more smoothly with humans. But their real accomplishment is in proving Tyra Banks right.
You have to smile with your eyes.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Sophie Bushwick.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In 2017, approximately 1 in 6 high school students reported a sports or physical activity-related concussion. Immediate symptoms of a concussion include headache, nausea, and double vision. Long-term, the effects of such injuries, particularly those that are more severe, can be life-changing. Healthcare providers, coaches, trainers, and parents should be aware of the symptoms of a concussion and how to treat them. A concussion protocol should be developed that includes withholding an athlete from practice and competition until all symptoms are resolved. While concussions cannot always be prevented, they can be treated in a way that decreases the chances of long-term health problems. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
What does Donald Trump mean by a safe third country? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Migrants from Honduras and El Salvador who survived the perilous land journey to the United States' southern border have gone through Guatemala. Trump insists that those migrants must be denied the right even to seek asylum in the United States unless they have filed for asylum first in Guatemala. The problem? To be returned to a third country, not the country the person came from, not the country they're seeking to migrate to, the United States, there needs to be a, quote, safe third country, end quote, agreement between the United States and that country. And the United States and Guatemala don't have such an agreement. Trump says, well, yes, he does. But the highest court in Guatemala says, no, he doesn't, because the Guatemalan Congress hasn't approved such an agreement, nor have virtually any other countries for that matter. And Guatemala isn't remotely capable of even considering these applications. And critically, Guatemala is not remotely safe for these migrants because the reach of the gangs and the violence they are fleeing is long. Indeed, the United States State Department says that violent crimes such as murder and armed robbery and extortion, other violent crimes and gang violence is rampant in Guatemala. Trump has designated Guatemala as a safe third country. It's not. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1881. That was the day the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners passed their first constitution at a meeting in Chicago. The meeting was organized by Peter J. McGuire. McGuire grew up on the Lower East Side of New York City. He became a well-known labor speaker and is credited with helping to found the Labor Day holiday. Representatives from 11 cities answered McGuire's call and came to Chicago. For 4 days, they debated and discussed their vision for a new union. In the end, they completed a constitution and general structure. They nominated McGuire as their first general secretary. At its founding, the new union had just over 2,000 members. It grew slowly, not even reaching 6,000 by 1885. Yet the union leaders remained determined. McGuire logged 18-hour days traveling to different cities, speaking, writing, and promoting the union cause. Then, in 1886, came the nationwide push for the 8-hour workday. On May 1st, carpenters marched in the streets with fellow workers in major cities across the nation. By 1890, union membership had grown to more than 50,000. By the time of the Carpenters' Convention in 1914, held in Indianapolis, the union boasted more than 261,000 members. The union's general secretary addressed the convention that day by looking back on what had been accomplished. He said, "Our organization today is something to be proud of." They never imagined for a moment that they would have an organization such as we have and accomplish as much as we have accomplished. Today, the Brotherhood includes more than 500,000 members. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
It's Monday, August 12th. I'm Lucy Steiner.
And I'm Sam Cedar. Which of these stories will you be talking about today?
Joe Biden mistakenly tells the press that he met with Parkland shooting survivors while he was the vice president. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris condemns Trump's immigration raids as part of a campaign of terror that will result in a flawed census. And lastly, Hong Kong International Airport cancels all of its departing flights as mass protests continue for the 10th straight weekend.
You are listening to Majority FM's AM Quickie, and these are the stories you need to know.
On Saturday, Joe Biden claimed that he was vice president during a mass shooting last year in Parkland, Florida, even though it occurred more than a year after he had left office. Biden told reporters in Iowa, quote, "Those kids in Parkland came up to see me when I was the vice president." This is the latest in a string of truly bizarre statements by Biden. On Thursday, he said that, quote, "poor kids are, quote, just as talented as white kids," before correcting himself and saying, quote, "wealthy kids." He also misstated the locations of the recent mass shootings as Houston and Michigan, but also soon corrected himself. Keep it up, Biden. It's going great. Keep running your campaign exactly like this. Senator Kamala Harris criticized recent immigration raids as part of the Trump administration's, quote, campaign of terror that will distort the upcoming 2020 census. Harris told NBC's Meet the Press, quote, "This administration has directed Homeland Security to conduct these raids as part of what I believe is this administration's campaign of terror, which is going to make whole populations of people afraid to go to work." Harris's comments come after ICE agents last Wednesday arrested nearly 700 allegedly undocumented immigrants at 7 poultry processing facilities in Mississippi. Every story about the undocumented should be preceded by allegedly. ICE has detained enough citizens at this point. I don't think they deserve the benefit of the doubt on that.
Hey, Majority.fm's AM Quickie is fueled by JustCoffee.coop. Just Coffee is a worker-owned coffee roaster based in Madison, Wisconsin that has sponsored the Majority Report for nearly a decade. Check out their collection of fair trade roasts, including our own Majority Report blend, and regardless of what you order, receive 10% off of your order when you use the code MAJORITY at checkout. All shipping, of course, is free. That's coupon code MAJORITY at justcoffee.coop.
Reuters is reporting that Hong Kong International Airport has canceled all remaining flight departures as of Monday, after thousands of demonstrators packed the main terminal. It's the 4th day of demonstrations at the extremely busy international airport, and the biggest disruption yet to the Chinese-controlled territory's economy since protests began in June. The cancellation comes after riot police again used tear gas on protesters in the 10th straight weekend of demonstrations, and as a senior Chinese official warned that the anti-government protests have reached a critical juncture. And now for what we're following today. Some quicker quickies.
Quicker quickie.
From CNN, right-wing politician Alejandro Giamatti won the Guatemalan presidential election Sunday, promising he would abolish the migration deal his predecessor made with the Trump administration. AP reports that a 26-year-old Palestinian gunman shot dead on Sunday was the 5th armed Palestinian to be killed by Israeli forces near the Gaza border fence over the weekend. The New York Times reports that guards at a Manhattan correctional facility tasked with watching billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein violated prison procedure the night of his apparent suicide. And lastly, Donald Trump on Saturday promoted a conspiracy theory linking Bill and Hillary Clinton to the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Well, no suicide of note would be complete without that.
Quicker Quickie.
That's it, folks. Thanks for listening to Majority.fm's AM Quickie. Sam?
Hey, thank you, Lucy. Don't forget to check out the Majority Report today at noon for our live show, or later, wherever your podcasts are found.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Should be going up to a high of, maybe 91, 92 degrees. Today, winds are currently light and variable, and they are out of the southwest and will remain light and variable throughout the day, throughout the morning, shifting out of the northwest and increasing in velocity to their usual 5 to 10 miles per hour, and continuing out of that direction and velocity tomorrow, where we are expected to have highs remaining in the low 90s. Grass pollen is moderate. Air quality index is in the good range, though has gone up a few points to 21 parts per million from what it was over the weekend. Oh, by the way, we had copious amounts of thunderstorm activity and quite a bit of precipitation that fell down from the sky in what we locally call a gully washer. Actually, not locally. That's more of a desert type of term. But it was a gully washer. Lots of rain fell down in somewhat short periods of time. And, streaming, as they would want to say. Okay, let's see. The daytime UV index, I believe I might have mentioned, or maybe I didn't, but it is at 8, so take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.93 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 88%. Oh, quite humid. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Some people have their P-tapes. I have mine. London is 65 with a rain shower. Paris, or as they like to say there, Paris, is they are now 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 100 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. Oh, and just coincidentally, they have a heat advisory. Just coincidentally. Kiev is 88 and fair. That's pretty hot. Kabul is 89 and fair. Still pretty hot. Hong Kong is 84 and partly cloudy. That's hot. Tokyo is 85 and mostly cloudy. Hot again, and just coincidentally, they have a heat advisory as well. Sydney, Australia is 48 degrees and clear, but they're in winter, and that's kind of warm for winter if you ask me. San Francisco, California is 57 and sunny. Well, they're in their summer, which is like winter, but that's pretty fair. That's about the time that they usually are, or the kind of weather that they usually are this time of year. Hey, but you know what? New York is 77 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. The Big Apple knows how. Doesn't it ever? And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And why wouldn't they be anonymous, knowing how Vlad works? And this might even obliquely be considered a criticism of Vlad. So, hey, for their own safety, please do remain anonymous. Russia's state communications watchdog has asked Google to stop advertising what Russia calls illegal mass events on its YouTube platform. It said yesterday, Sunday, tens of thousands of Russians staged what observers call the country's biggest political protest in 8 years on Saturday, defying a crackdown to demand free elections to Moscow's city legislature. Multiple YouTube channels broadcast the event live. The watchdog, Roscoe Mendazor, said some entities have been buying advertising tools from YouTube, such as push notifications, in order to spread information about illegal mass protests, including those aimed at disrupting elections. You mean disrupting elections like people going to vote? for the candidate that they would like to vote for, but they just can't get that candidate on the ballot because they have to kiss Vlad's ring.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Casey Michelle of Think Progress brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. For years, the Texas nationalist movement has cultivated ties in Russia, especially those who've received financing directly from the Kremlin. Now, as Think Progress discovered, one of the Texas-based secessionist group's flags is actually hanging outright in Moscow, highlighting the ongoing questions surrounding their links overseas. Last week, Alexander Ionov posted a video on his Instagram page, which remains one of his preferred platforms for highlighting his ties to other groups. Ionov runs the Anti-Globalization Movement of Russia, a group that helps organize secession movements across the west of the United States, and which has received financing from the Kremlin in the past. In the video, the Texas Nationalist Movement flag can be seen hanging prominently in the office. The caption of the video read, "If your office doesn't look like this, don't even call me." Ionov confirmed that the Texas Nationalist Movement flag is hanging in his group's office, saying it had been hanging there for a long time. When asked why the flag is hanging, Ionov responded, "Because it's beautiful." Oh, really? The flag joins other items Ionov has previously hung in his office, including a letter from Russian President Vladimir Putin, personally thanking Ionov for his work to strengthen friendship between peoples. And Ionov has also been involved in raising money for Maria Butina, the convicted Russian agent who successfully infiltrated the National Rifle Association, and as I always say, follow the NRA laundered Russian rubles. Oh, you think Russian rubles exchanged isn't worth very much? Trust me. They pay a lot of money for condos with the Trump brand on them. The Texas Nationalist Movement did not respond to Think Progress's questions, but Ionov said the flag was a gift. The flag highlights the years of strange ties between the Texas-based group and patrons in Moscow. The Texas Nationalist Movement, the leading pro-secession group in Texas, claims that its mission is to secure and protect the political, cultural, and economic independence of the nation of Texas, and to restore and protect a constitutional republic and the inherent rights of the people of Texas. I got to tell you, they had the same sort of thing here, and they still do. They want parts of Oregon and parts of Northern California to secede and create their own state called Jefferson. But I'm telling you, this manifesto, I looked into it. It's not a Bible for utopia. It's a cookbook! All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. So we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.